session. So I've got a small PPT for you here, and I'm going to hook it up on the computer. So tell me first a little about your background. How many of you are interested in exploring independent practice, or you're already independent practitioners? That's really important for me to know, because this conversation is intended for people who want to pursue independent practice. So would you like to let me know on chat, please? How many of you are already practicing? How many of your students? Just let me know briefly. Okay, so I'll wait for your responses on chat. Okay, use the chat feature, not the Q&A feature. Use the chat one. Okay, now I'm going to discuss what has changed in the legal services market over the past 20 years. Now, why are we discussing that? So there are certain stereotypes. If you want to start independent practice, there are certain mindsets, there are certain stereotypes that stop us from achieving our full potential. And what we're saying is that these stereotypes actually pertain to legal practice as it was in the pre-90s era. I'll give you, but first let us start with acknowledging. If you want to start independent practice, we want to acknowledge the fact that the decision is a brave one. Okay, it is not an easy one. Now, few concerns that haunt independent practitioners or that bother independent practitioners are: how will I find my first client? How can I consistently generate new clients? I'll get one client, but how can I consistently generate my second client, my third client, my fourth client? Will the new clients keep coming? Okay, if I got my first client, let's say from within my network, how will I get my next client? Why will clients trust me? Why will they agree to pay me? Is it going to be possible for me to compete with law firms, with the big law firms which are established in the industry? Can I build a highly profitable practice for myself? How can it continue to grow over time? Okay, now what you want now, these questions that are there, no, now I want you to examine these questions today and in the subsequent webinars that I will conduct in light of three stereotypes. Okay, and first stereotype I'm telling you, but what's different first between 1990s and now, and then we go to the first stereotype. See, before 1990s, what happened was that Indian economy wasn't liberalized. Okay, so if you read economics or legal history of India, you will see that foreigners couldn't invest in India. India did not have even current account convertibility. So foreigners could not come into India. There was a lot of permissions required. Indian businesses also needed to take licenses to operate. So starting a new business was very difficult. Of course, there was no internet, so the whole idea of technology startups hadn't arisen. Okay, so in that time, only litigation was a viable option. But what happened after that? From 1990s, the economy opened up, so foreign investment started to come in. Internal Indian licensing requirements were removed, so it was easier to start a business, okay, domestically. From 2000 and 2010 onwards, what happened was that technology, internet started penetrating vast tracts of the country, and globally it became a phenomenon. What that meant was that it became increasingly easier for a new business to be started without a lot of capital. Prior to this, a new business, maybe in the manufacturing sector or even in the services sector, would need a lot of capital. You would know, even a lawyer's office, you know, if you take up a lawyer's office in a good place, in a good office location with your set it up internally well, put a library inside it, that itself will run you a bill of 10 to 15 lakhs. Okay, so now what happened with so if this was the case with a service provider's office, you can imagine how much, like somebody who's making computers or engaged in other kinds of businesses like distribution and all of that, how much capital that would take. But with with technology and the internet, all that went away. So you will also see that law firms, which the biggest law firms of the country today, which have, you know, more than 300 to 500, 750 lawyers. You'll see that Cyril Armachand Mangaldas has 750 lawyers today. Okay, now back in the 1980s, these firms had anywhere between 20 to 50 lawyers across the country. Okay, now there has been an explosion because of this kind of liberalization. Now, what does that mean? In a way, the meaning of lawyering has evolved. Lawyering means more than just litigation. Litigation is included, but other aspects of legal work are also included. Now we separated that, acha, you can work in a law firm, you can work in a company, and you can go to court. And we say that these are three different things you can do as a lawyer. But right now, just let's look at how it all evolved from one thing that lawyers were doing. So once businesses started to invest in India, or Indian businesses started to grow, the domestic economy started to grow a lot more. Then the new practice areas that came into existence for corporate lawyers, for lawyers who assisted companies and foreigners, were projects, project finance, banking and finance, general corporate, capital markets, M&A. If you want, I can briefly explain what these practice areas are about. Projects is when you get a concession agreement, like a license from a government to build, let's say, an airport, okay, or a highway, or a port, or so these kind of infrastructural facilities, okay. Banking and finance practice deals with loans that are given for various kinds of business purposes to companies, high value loans. Then there is project finance, which deals with the financing of the project. So I explained that in the projects practice, you are essentially dealing with different kinds of grants that are given by the government. Like these are called through concession agreements. But how when you get the grant, how do you actually finance the project, the making of the road or the highway or the airport or the bridge or the metro? Okay, that's through project finance practice. General corporate practice deals with various kinds of queries that arise from clients which pertain to corporate law, not just Companies Act, okay? Corporate law, IP, technology, SEBI, RBI related regulations, FEMA related issues, lots of them. Capital markets is usually related to how companies are raising funds from the public, whether through IPO or rights issue, or through something called as a private placement, okay. And also how they can, now there are all of these ways are used by public companies to raise money from the public, okay. Now a lot of regulations of SEBI get involved, and Companies Act, of course, is involved in this process. Then there was a lot of M&A work that came into existence because there was acquisition of or investment into Indian companies, creation of subsidiaries by foreign companies into India, okay, setting up business presence in India. All these kinds of work came into existence. So this was the meat of the corporate practice from 1990s to about 2000 or 2010. From 2010 onwards, now new practice areas have started emerging. A reason for that is because the volume of regulation in the market has increased a lot more than it was earlier. And examples of the new practice areas are employment, technology, media laws, competition, white collar crime. There are many other areas also, okay. So now, because of the internet and because of technology, it's easier for a new business to start without capital, raise investment, and become profitable. Okay, so a new business can take off in as little as 6 months. Okay, now I'm not saying that for a legal practice, I'm saying for a new business right now. Okay, but what that means is that with such a new business, what happens is that they are able to pay. They have the money to pay a lawyer for services, but they cannot afford the rates of a big law firm. That issue arises for them. Okay, you can take now location, and another thing that's different today because of technology, how it has changed the game. Like you've all seen during lockdown how you've had anything that was happening, like whether it's classes, work, everything is happening remotely. So location neutrality, which was earlier, some people used to hesitate to accept it, now it has become the norm, right? So people can work from anywhere, serve clients from different places. I myself am currently taking this session from Goa, so this is a different location. So you can continue your work. Okay, I have a 10 or a 12-hour workday from here. So you can continue your work from anywhere in the country. Fancy offices, cars, and marquee addresses are not relevant, and these used to really be very important earlier for a lawyer to succeed. But now you don't have to have a swanky office in a plush location and all of that. Okay, now what are these mindsets these mindset issues that we must recognize. So the first thing was that when somebody thought of establishing independent practice, they thought that I must depend on litigation in courts to earn my livelihood. That litigation practice is what I need to do. Therefore, I need to train under a senior. Okay, now what happens is that this is coming from the pre-liberalization 1991 era. Okay, and at that time there was no other work except for this. The only option available was to practice litigation in courts. But now the situation is very different. Now I'll give you examples of what new businesses will need. Okay, and then you have to take this within whether as an independent practitioner you would want to do that or not, because some independent practitioners, so a lot of you would have grown up thinking that if I'm practicing independently, I have to be a lawyer. I have to be a lawyer in court, or litigation is the only true form of independent practice. Okay, now this is coming from the era of the 90s, pre-90s era. Okay, now if you are consulting a new business, before it goes into dispute, there is a ton of stuff a new business needs to get sorted, for which it can pay a young lawyer. I'll give you an example of what all they need advice on. For example, business structuring. How do you structure a new business when they start out? How should they structure arrangements with their team members, with their co-founders? Should they create an LLP or a company? Should they have a co-founders agreement amongst themselves? How should they draft the articles of association between for their company? If there are personal loans or there is loans from relatives, how do we account for that? If there is personal property which has been put into the business, how do we account for that? Okay, then there are various registrations that are needed to kickstart business, like registration, incorporation with MCA, tax authorities, MSME ministry. This is for claiming some benefits as a startup, especially related to money recovery related issues, okay, or any sectoral regulators. So in certain sectors, like, in some cases, FSSAI may be necessary. In certain sectors, you may need to have a registration under Legal Metrology Act. Okay, so these kind of questions can come up. Then obtaining intellectual property protection is the first thing that they would need. Sometimes they need advice or training on IP, followed by legal work around trademark registration. Okay, and then there's more advanced work on that if there is an objection received from the registry or from a third party, then there is prosecution and opposition work to handle. These are basically proceedings before the registry that one has to represent their clientele. Then, as most businesses today, you will see, have gone online. And so they could be like, they could have an e-commerce site of their own. Okay, or so what do they need? Whether it's a services company, which or an OTT app or an e-commerce website, whatever the business has, it is likely to need a terms and conditions and various other policies for itself. Okay, and you can't copy paste these. You can check these out on the internet for, let's say, a Netflix. Check out something for Spotify. Check out the policies for Google. If you look at the policies for Google, Facebook, and Amazon, you will find them to be extremely lengthy and complicated, and there are a lot of such policies. So you have to understand this, that a lot of thought has gone into drafting those. Now, those are the kinds of work that that startup entrepreneurs need for this. Saurabh, I'm going to get to your question. Huh? Just give me some time to complete this agenda and I'll take questions. Then executing contracts with employees, vendors, distributors. So one is having, when you start hiring your first employee, what kind of paperwork is needed? So there is contractual aspects. Then there are sometimes local laws that apply, like there may be a Shops and Establishments Act that is applicable to your office, and you may need a registration under that. Okay, then you may need to execute contracts with those employees. If there are senior level employees, you will need to enter into a stock option plan with them to incentivize them. There are various kinds of stock options. One is to give them an option to shares of the company. You could also alternately create something called a phantom stock option. Okay, these are, I'm naming them. I'm not going to be able to fully explain them in this session to you. But a phantom stock option is something which, rather than giving the shares to the person, it gives the monetary difference in the value of the company between two different points in time. So if someone starts off today when the company's value is X, and he has say 1% of the company, and after 2 years the value of the company triples, then he will get the difference between the subsequent value and the previous value, and 1% of that. Okay, so that's the cash equivalent of the difference in the value versus getting the share itself. Okay, these are other kinds of option plans that entrepreneurs frequently need. Then many startups, the software, for the backend of the software that the startup is running, they may need a software development agreement if a third party is making it and if it's not being made in-house. If it's made in-house, of course, the employees or the consultants working in-house will have a consultancy agreement or an employment agreement. But if it's made by a third-party agency, you will have a proper software development agreement. If you procure services from any vendors, you will have a service provider agreement, okay, with them. Then there will be, now remember that all this work in the initial phase, the most important milestone for a startup is to generate revenues, get some customers, have a profit, and raise investment. Okay, so they want to become investment ready as soon as possible, and they will raise some funds, like, at the earliest possible stage, for which they are going to need you to conduct mock due diligences, ensure that their paperwork is in order, so you'll know everything about their business if you get their work to start with. Then, so what is now, when they're getting investment, they will want you to review their term sheet, they will want you to review their investment contracts, they may want you to speak and negotiate with their investors. Okay, if there are notices, then they will want you to edit these investment contract drafts. Then if there is infringement of intellectual property, they will want you to engage in various kinds to draft notices or to send takedown notices online. Okay, so then responding to notices from various regulatory authorities. Sometimes you get notices from tax departments, sometimes from employment authorities. So various kinds of authorities are there from whom you get notices, and there needs to be a response prepared from them. Most common ones are income tax, GST authorities, or there could be labor commissioners for employment. These are some of the most common ones. Okay, Saurabh, is there any online work in energy laws like trademark laws? So energy laws as energy contracts work, right? And then there is energy related litigation, which is done before APTEL and the electricity commissions. Now, apart from that, now this is not the energy industry. Huh? The industry includes, let's say, people who are making online solar photovoltaic cells or various kinds of equipment for alternative energy. For them, there will be online work. Okay, so there, that would be regular contract related work, regular procurement contracts, distribution contracts, manufacturing contracts. All these things will come into existence there. Sometimes you may have to also do some work to enable them to get benefit of a scheme or a subsidy, because government subsidizes alternative energy under various schemes. So that kind of work can be done online. Okay. Okay. So now, apart from this, businesses would need help with trainings like POSH training, employment training, code of conduct training, anti-corruption training, okay, negotiation training, data protection training, depending on their model. These are some of the most common trainings that any business would love to have from a lawyer. And rather than going out at, saying that give me work, this is a great way to educate and sensitize potential clients. Okay, so Sharad, that is not a problem, but freelancing platforms you have like 𝗃𝗿𝗃𝗃 and all, you can make your profiles there, because the platform, the argument is that the platform is the place which is helping you reach out, and yours is just a profile listed there. Now, so stay with me, okay? I'm going to address these queries. Okay. Now, a lot of independent practitioners do not think of this work or think of doing this work for a few reasons, because they've not learned it, or because they don't know how to learn it, and they do not feel confident doing it, and they don't think that, this is really lawyering. So at this point, to be able to think of that, you need to be settled with the idea that that lawyering includes providing solutions which a client needs from a lawyer. This solution cannot be provided. chartered accountants and company secretaries can work on portions of this, but all of this is only capable of being provided by a lawyer. So if you think that only litigation is the way for an independent practitioner to go, you may be missing out on an opportunity here. Okay, now, so the important part here is that a lot of this work can be performed from anywhere in India. You don't need to be physically present in a particular location. Now, if you look online, you can look on the SME Ministry's website or the Startup India website, and you will find registered startups in almost every city in India. The smallest of cities, you will find startups. But in case you don't find startups in your town or location, you can do this work from anywhere, right? And in fact, if you're in a smaller city or a smaller town, you will have a cost advantage compared to the cost that a lawyer based in, say, Delhi or Mumbai would charge a startup. Okay, and you are equally in a position to reach out to those companies. I'll tell you how. Okay, and that's because of the internet. Okay, so now the thing is that if you if you are still interested in litigation and you're passionate about it, this kind of work actually stabilizes your earnings and also enables you to get clients for subsequent litigation that may arise. So let's say that you've been associated with a client for about 2 years. You've done like 20 contracts for them. You've helped them through incorporation, raising investment, lots of things. Now suddenly there is a contract with the distributor which comes into dispute. Okay, and that contract had an arbitration clause which they drafted. So who are they going to go to first? They're going to go to you, right? They're going to think of you. Now, if you do this work, great. If you don't do this work, you'll pass it on to someone else. Now, if you want to build a profile in litigation, in any case, litigation can take a little longer for you, okay, to get clients. So this is one great way of doing the initial seed work, which enables you to get your own clients. Similarly, there will be various kinds of actions in respect of IP violations that you will take. Okay, for example, sending cease and desist notices or online takedown notices. A lot of times that work will be useful and it will stop the problem. But where somebody refuses to back down, that is going to be your opportunity again to file an infringement suit. So there are various connections between your regular advisory work or corporate work to litigation, which if you learn, you can actually set up an independent practice and stabilize your work. Okay. The second mindset barrier that is there is that it takes years to develop your own clients, and you must start training with a senior first, and you should not expect returns for the first 10 years. Some people say 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. I mean, that can be anything. Okay. And now if you are working, now the thing is this, that if you're working with a senior whose practice is in litigation primarily, and they are, let's say, independent or, and they've got some juniors, chances are that they established their practice about 20 years back. Okay, somewhere in the 1990s, somewhere in the 2000s. At that time, the tools that were used to build your own practice, to deal with clients, to generate new client work were very different. The kind of services that were provided were also very different. For sure, your senior would be the master of his or her court or the forum that they practice in. But what about the other areas of work where there's a demand, but which demand is not being served by them? Okay, that's the question. So now if you're working with a senior, you will be subject to 3 limitations. Okay, one is that you will learn only the techniques that they know from their experience, which is based in a different era. So you don't want do you want your ambitions to be limited, by what their time offered as compared to now? And, I'm guessing the answer is no. And if you look at even, anyone from the younger generation, any kid today, you will see that how they want to explore everything that is offered by the internet, right? They want to try out and start new things. They want to use new ways of communicating, new ways of sharing content. So the important thing is that you want to not limit yourself. While it's great to learn from a senior, you don't want to miss out on other opportunities on other opportunities for developing your clients. Second, you don't want to just depend on your senior for the training and drain their time out, because it's too much of a responsibility to place on a senior who has a practice to build and run, and you're putting the responsibility of training you on them and also paying you on them. Instead, if you could learn by using some tools that are already available in the market and use resources, you stand a greater chance of contributing to your seniors practice. Because, and I have some calculations. For example, you can, if your senior is earning, let's say, 2 lakhs a month, okay, working 200 hours in a week, or and charging, let's say they're working 100 hours, sorry, let's say they're working 100 hours in a month and charging 2000 rupees on an average per hour and earning 2 lakhs a month, okay. And now let's assume that by yours being there, two things can happen. There's somebody, a junior who's not trained, okay. Junior who's not trained would usually increase the amount of time a senior has to put in to do the same work. Why? Because they will go untrained and they will do some work which the senior will have to review and correct. And before that, the senior had to also brief the junior. So rather than that, the senior often may prefer to do it himself or herself, or they will have some margin that, okay, I'll give 10 hours extra in the month to train my junior. That makes them do the same work in 210 hours, in 110 hours, sorry. Now assume that by yours being there, you reduce your seniors working time by 30%. So every day you are going to save them 3 hours, 2.5 hours. How much is that? Out of 8 hours, you save them 2.4 hours. That's all you need to save. If you do that, you're going to end up saving about 60 hours. In a 100-hour month, you will end up saving 30 hours. Okay, now that can be used by them for doing client work, right? 30 hours you save them. How much will they charge for 30 hours? 60,000 extra, 2,000 rupees per hour. That is 60,000 extra they can earn because you save them 30 hours in the month. Many seniors would be working for 200 hours, so you could even save them 60 hours. That is a saving of about 1 lakh. That's an additional growth that they got because of you of 1,20,000. Now that is what enables them to pay a good stipend to you of 30,000 or 40,000, like that kind of salary, versus a survival income of 5,000 or 10,000. So this is a view you have to keep in mind, okay, when you're looking at going independent. Even then, because when you're working as a junior, at that time, one of your alternatives would be that, okay, I should get my own clients and I must contribute to my senior. So this is something that you want to keep in mind. Now, the other limitation was that there was no internet penetration 5 years, even 5 years earlier. In 2015, if you look at things, Zoom wasn't there. We were having some webinars, but it was on Google Hangouts and stuff, and it was not as seamless as it is today. So now those tools were never used by lawyers, by seniors who were working in the earlier generation. So you want to be able to explore that today to get a full insight on growing your practice. Now, I'll give you an example, okay? 4 years back, we conducted a pilot in 2016 with 𝘃𝗏𝗏𝗏, a legal solutions company, which was built from scratch to a monthly revenue rate of 8 lakhs per month in 6 months. Okay, that's an annual revenue of about 1 crore. Now, what was this pilot about? This pilot was about identifying solutions that can be generated for clients to resolve their pain points. So it wasn't about saying that a suit will be filed. It wasn't about saying that this contract will be done. It was about saying this, that you want to be investment ready. These 4 or 5 things from the legal point of view are important. You want to recover unpaid dues of 20 lakhs. These 4 or 5 steps and actions must be taken for 2 purposes. One is a preventive purpose, okay, so that you minimize chances of people not paying you. One is a purpose of recovery, that if there are unpaid dues, then these 4 steps have to be taken to increase your chances of recovery. And we saw that people are preferring to pay for solutions-oriented approaches. I understand that lawyers cannot guarantee an outcome, so don't guarantee an outcome. But say that, for this pain point, these are the actions that are highly likely to yield a result. Okay, and we teach this in detail. I will teach you this in a 3-hour workshop on making roadmaps, on basically generating 2 new clients, and earning a supplementary income of 2 lakhs per month, which I will be doing in a workshop on 27 November. Okay, in that I'm going to teach you about what roadmaps are and how to build them. Okay, but yeah, so the essential part is that you don't need years of training with a senior, but you definitely need a very heavy client-focused approach. Okay. Now the third mindset. Okay, the third mindset is so 1 second. I have a question from Saurabh, and Saurabh, I'm going to deal with this question. Yours is a very useful question. And Sharad, your question I answered, so I hope that's sorted. So the third premise is that word of mouth is the only sustainable way to secure new clients. This is also a relic and a mindset that is there from previous era, that all other efforts to build your network are either considered cheap, beneath what a lawyer does, or not noble or unethical. Okay, and this is contrary to like what you have for insurance. Insurance is the subject matter of solicitation. Similarly for mutual fund products also, and you are supposed to read the terms and conditions carefully before investing, but solicitation is allowed over there. However, here it's not allowed, right? But what do you do then? Does that mean you're stuck to word of mouth, or are you allowed to do something else? Okay, now see, first let's look at word of mouth. It's going to help you in the long run for sure, and you're never going to do away with word of mouth. For example, you can't afford to have dissatisfied clients, okay, because that will bring you a bad word of mouth and that will not help you. But word of mouth alone may not be sufficient to kickstart and keep your practice running in the short term, unless you are a lawyer who already has a lot of clients, okay, and you can't handle more than 2 clients in 3 months, or that's, you're saturated and you don't want any more clients, then word of mouth is fine. You don't need to do any client development. But most of us are not there, and if we want to grow, like if we are saturated by working individually, we may want to consider expanding, hiring a junior, or having a new partner and getting more work, right? So if that's the plan, then word of mouth is going to be a supplement. It's not going to be working alone. Okay, so now what used to happen earlier was that if you are arguing in court, you could expect that an in-house counsel or a CFO or the client himself or herself, or a briefing counsel, the briefing lawyer, the solicitor will see you, and solicitor may recommend you to other clients of his or her own, or other solicitors from other firms may see you perform in court and recommend you to other clients. But the thing is that today there is other kinds of work. So for those kinds of work, you can't expect a client to only trust a litigator, because the client may not be there to see you perform in court. And further, for a young lawyer, a lot of times it's difficult to get an audience, especially in the higher courts, in the High Court or Supreme Court, right? So it is not so easy for that reason to, it's not such a viable idea to depend on this to get you new clients. Okay, now what is then the alternative? That is very important. Okay, so like I'll give you an example. So what's the alternative? The alternative is being on the internet. Now I know that you have questions about how much of it is legal, what is not. I'll come to that also. But what is the alternative is being on the internet. And really the point is that, like your physical office was in the real world, your digital website is in the online world. How does somebody find your physical office? If they got your address, they came to it, right? Now in the digital world, you want certain ways. There are certain ways in which people can find you and find your name, find your website, land up there. Okay, so the ways are through social media or through finding content on the internet. And today, for example, during lockdown, if somebody, even before lockdown, if somebody is facing a problem, if a client is facing a problem, okay, if let's say they want to figure out what an optionally convertible preference share means, and this is a term, this is a security that an investor is going to give them. This investor has agreed to invest and has said that we want this instrument, and the client wants to understand how to negotiate. What would they do? They would go on the internet directly, right? And then they will what will they come across? They will find articles. Maybe they'll find something on 𝗿𝗏𝗿𝗃 to explain the concept, but they may also find some legal articles by lawyers explaining the concept and what to negotiate from a startup entrepreneur's perspective. Now that's the kind of content that you want to create, okay, which a client is highly likely to discover because it's relevant. You're not asking for work. You're not saying I charge this much for review, give work to me. That is advertising, that is soliciting. You're not promoting your post. You're not spending money on Facebook. You're not purchasing Google ads. Okay, so you're not advertising like that. You're not soliciting. You are writing content to share your knowledge and expertise. You're educating and sensitizing potential clients, and you're using social media to express yourself. Okay, till there it's fine. You would have seen lawyers, they're coming, big famous lawyers come on TV, right, all the time. The best law firms of the country have a proper online presence. They have elaborate websites. You can see Trilegal's YouTube video channel, 𝗍𝗵𝗃𝗊's law firm websites, their research articles, detailed research articles on different practice areas, 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗋𝗻 blog, which has so many useful articles. And you will see that even if you follow any of them on LinkedIn, you will see how many updates they keep sharing. Okay, so that's not a problem. All right, so it's really the internet which is flattening the world for lawyers, because if you depend on arguing and getting noticed in the courtroom, you understand that there is a problem of, okay, sometimes senior lawyers being preferred, sometimes there is an issue like, sometimes you feel that first generation lawyers don't get an equal opportunity, or that non-NLU grads don't get an equal opportunity. All this keeps going on. Okay, but however, on the internet, the world is flat. Everybody has an equal opportunity, provided you are putting out relevant content. Okay, now here, for example, are the firms which have had, I can show you their blogs. Okay, and tomorrow I'm going to also share how to start building your presence on the internet and some new skills you should be learning. But let me show you the blog of, say, 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗃𝗊𝗲. Hang on. Because a lot of you have concerns, no, that is this legal, is that legal? See, the top law firms are doing it, and this is as an research and academic piece. You can see how their team members, their partners, seniors are writing there. Okay. Similarly, Trilegal has also, they have a YouTube channel as well. You can see this YouTube channel, Trilegal Unlocked. On these, you don't have disclaimers popping up. Okay, they are directly reachable because this is educational content. They're not saying give us work. They are positioning themselves as thought leaders in the space and sharing content which is valuable. Okay, so you can see the videos here. Then I'm going to share 𝗍𝗵𝗃𝗊𝗲's research papers. So NDA has a lot of valuable content, detailed research notes, posts, webinars, all of that is happening regularly. Okay, so which basically means that thought leadership is the way that the big law firms are using to reach out to clients. And as an independent practitioner now, a similar opportunity is available to you to engage in such kind of thought leadership. Okay, you may need to acquire a few skill sets that you don't learn in college, like using Wix to build a website. I'm going to discuss all of this tomorrow. Okay, or what kind of content to post on social media. How do I build a proposal for a client? How do I negotiate my rates with a potential client? All of that will be there. But when it's backed by the constant or the strong online presence that you have, even clients come in with a high value perception of you, and then they also know that you are somebody who's who's doing something really advanced, and they will not insist on negotiation, and they'll understand that you are bringing a superior value proposition on the table. Okay, so again, if you are interested in growing your legal practice to a level where you can generate 2 new clients per month and earn an additional income of up to 2 lakhs per month, this is a unique one we created during COVID era, and because lawyers were figuring out alternatives as courts were shut or only taking urgent matters. So we created this workshop. This is a 3-hour workshop taking place on 27th. This is how you can enroll by clicking here. Okay, fees is 500, and I would really invite you to come to register for the workshop and be with me for 3 hours and learn more about this. And tomorrow you can come for a free session. We will update you on the time. Okay, tomorrow you can come for a free session. I think it's around it's Asta, what is the time that the free session is? Okay, she's not here. So it's in the evening again, tomorrow around 5 to 6 or 6 to 7. Okay, so tomorrow we'll be discussing the skills that you need to learn as an independent practitioner, which are not taught in the syllabus. So we're not learning technical legal skills, but the other side, the business side of law practice. That's what we are going to discuss tomorrow. Okay, and now I am open to discussing and taking any questions with you. So Saurabh says that since there are so many IPR firms and independent lawyers and the area is booming, how can we prevent dilution of this field? He's seen his friend charges 500 rupees for filing a trademark, and firms charge up to 7 to 8,000. And one should not go beyond the price just to get a client. So Saurabh, this is something that I deal with in the workshop as well. What happens is that registration has become over time the simplest kind of service, or the most standardized kind of service. So everybody is competing. Okay, everybody is competing for that same service, and that is why the prices for that service are falling down. Eventually, what happens in a market where there's a lot of competition? You will be doing this at dirt cheap prices, and what will happen is that the bigger firms sometimes can even do it for free to get the client. So what you need to do is that, you know, this part will have to be cheap. There's nothing you can do about it. If you provide some additional value or some additional convenience, you can charge a little for it. But you will have to strengthen a supplementary service that you can offer a client, because the client acquisition work, you know, you said how not to go beyond the price to get a client. So this is the acquisition work. Okay, consider that doing the free trademark is literally your trust building work with the client. Okay, there are things which is very hard to charge a lot for. I'll tell you: tax registration, company incorporation, trademark filing. But if something gets stuck, after that, trademark prosecution, infringement litigation, trademark watch, okay, registration of non-conventional trademark, those things are the higher value services there. Protection of trademark on the internet from infringement, okay, that is a higher value service there. Then in case of contracts, for example, people, you cannot charge a lot for an NDA because the document itself is not very complicated. But there are other documents you can charge a lot for. For example, a SaaS contract that you're making, software as a services agreement, or a software development agreement, okay, or an integration agreement. These are complicated contracts. You can charge a lot more for them. For investment agreements, these are shareholder agreements, share purchase agreements. These you can charge a lot more for. For ESOP plans, you can charge a decent amount. Okay, Sharad, how easy or difficult is it for getting international work? So for getting international work, you should come for the session at 9 p.m. which Ramanuj is conducting. And international work, he's identifying specific areas where it is possible to get international work. This is by international work, I mean, you know, work for a foreign client and which is situated in a foreign jurisdiction. So he's currently discussing how to get IPR work from foreign clients. Okay, so these could be foreign lawyers, foreign law firms who need some work related to the registry, or for some client to be done for a contract, or some other tasks to be performed, which you will do for the lawyer. Okay, and that work can be highly remunerative because of a cost advantage if you're working from India. Okay, so you can look at that. But as far as your work that I just discussed today goes, I discussed an example of how you can serve a startup. But like this, you can be briefed, for example, by a foreign company which has set up Indian presence. They could reach out to you as well, a smaller foreign company. Okay, so that kind of international work can also come to you. Okay. So Rajshri, if you are currently, Sharad, let me know if that addresses your question. Saurabh, you also let me know. Rajshri, if you are currently pursuing LLB and you want to understand what communication should you do, how should you develop your communication basically for general corporate advisory? You want to create a lot of content, videos, educational videos. You should write some articles. You should do some interviews of in-house counsels or of general corporate, of law firm partners or senior associates, 50 law firm partners and senior associates who do general corporate advisory work, and what kinds of matters they work on. Okay, categorize them. Okay, present it in like a 50-page, 60-page document. Okay, publish it on the internet. That kind of work will get you to know all the senior associates and principal associates and partners, and when you're in need of internships, they will always welcome that. Okay, so yeah, Sharad, so it's not about easy or difficult, it is about, this is the opportunity there. Okay, and one thing about getting US paralegal work is that you'll be able to charge, it's called US paralegal work, and you can charge a lot more for it than what you can earn in India. And traditionally what happens is LPOs used to get that work, but there is more supply, more people, more demand from it. So LPOs used to get that work and hire Indians to do that, and LPOs used to manage the quality. But if you as an Indian lawyer learn it, okay, then you can do that work. As far as easy or difficult goes, you have to learn those specific skills. Okay, so if you learn those skills, then you can perform it. And learning any skill takes some time. You can look at the courses on lawsikho.com to understand how to go about things. Okay, which skill you need. Like there is a course on intellectual property rights conducted with Texas A&M University and LawSikho, which is specifically going to train you on how to get this international work. Okay, on US PTO related work, international trademarks work, international patents work. So that's a 3-month course. So you need to train yourself for that time, and you will have US faculty and Indian faculty and a certificate from a US university and all of that, so that you can actually build your credibility to get and perform this kind of work, and you will learn each of these tasks. Okay, so I want to see you all tomorrow and continue. And those of you who are interested can go ahead and register for the workshop on 27th. Okay, and any other questions, feel free to let me know. Else I will complete the webinar. Any feedback? All right, thank you everyone.